I think recording's going. So Paul Cappaert is a fairly recent graduate last year from Central Michigan University and is a .NET developer. And he's also a Python enthusiast and an expert in developing with Django. So he's going to be giving us an intro on Django's ORM. So welcome, Paul. Thanks for presenting today.
Yep, thanks, Dan. Yeah, so today I'm going to be talking about the Django ORM, one just very specific part of Django. Django itself, is, if you're not aware, is a pure Python framework for building websites and web APIs. Django can be obviously useful for web development, but really I think any Python developer can potentially benefit from knowing Django, just knowing a little bit of how to use it. You could use it to enhance your own project. Because eventually, if you're running a project for a while, you either want to save a lot of data, in which case Django can help you with that if you want to use a relational database, and or if you want to run your code on some other machine distinct from like just your own computer, so somewhere on another network or somewhere on the internet. So Django, as I said, can be used to build websites. It has all of the features you would need. It has the templating. It can create like the actual pages you look at. And then the ORM is the part of the framework that is data persistence. So you might have also heard of SQL Alchemy, very similar ORM. That's just an ORM. And then Django ORM is a little bit different. It's included with the Django library. So I'm going to explain just a little bit of the jargon here. First, I'm saying ORM a lot. That stands for Object Relational Mapper. So the object in that is just like a Python object. And ORMs can be in a lot of different languages, Java, C#, any object-oriented languages can have an ORM. Entity framework is probably another really famous one for C#. And then the relational mapper part is stating that it maps an object in the language to a relational database. So this means that you don't have to write a lot of SQL. Basically, a lot of that is done for you. You just have to write natively in the language. And one thing I wanted to, I guess, before I get into this, is kind of gauge our people's experience levels. So how many people here are actually professional developers? I don't know if there's like a hand raise in Zoom here. Oh yes, there's a little hand raise. So we got, just leave your hand up if you're a professional developer. Okay, that's cool. So we got a lot of people are interested in Python. And then how many people are familiar with SQL? You've at least written a few SQL queries.
And how do I raise hand here?
So you can go down to the participants at the bottom, and then it's got some controls there. You can. Oh
yeah, that's what I'm looking at. Yeah. So anyone, currently everyone raising their hand if they're familiar with SQL. Does everyone see how to do that? And Daniel, didn't you say? Wait, who is it that said they were an Oracle DBA?
I am Daniel C.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I imagine that, yeah, this topic might be of interest to you if you want to use Python with relational database. You could use the Django ORM.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. But most people are not super familiar. So part of this, I'm going to give just a little kind of overview. A pretty primitive understanding of what a relational database is, but just to start out is definitely it. I think it works. So yeah, relational database, you can really think of like the way it's data is saved in relational database. You can think of just like a spreadsheet, pretty much. You're storing data in distinct tables, and each table represents something. And in this case, I'm going to show you creating a Python object that represents a blog post, and then that's going to have a table in the database that's for blog posts. And with these tables, the way it's laid out is you have your columns represent the attributes of your of your objects. And then the rows are the individual objects themselves. So blog post needs to have like a title, right? It needs to have content. And then the thing with the relational database is you need to have a primary key, something to uniquely identify. So for this instance, the title could be the primary key here, or we could create a new attribute just called ID, which actually we're going to do in Django in a minute. And then now that we've created our attributes, they actually fill things in. You've got, so like Python is awesome is the title, and then a bunch of content. This is ID of 1. You could just keep adding things. So one thing just to note is the data you're storing in your database, everything in this table has to fit this format. Python is, itself more flexible. Relational databases have to follow a schema. Not only do you have to, have the data fit. Usually there are rules for each column, the exact data stored. So there might here might be a I think what's called usually called a var card. Like a certain number of characters are stored, or if it's not character data, then it might be an integer data. Lots of different data types, but we don't have to worry about that. We're going to be dealing with that in the ORM is going to take care of most of that. So now that we've just had a brief sort of conceptual look at how the data is actually stored, we can jump into the practical example, and everyone's free to follow along. I'm going to try to do this slowly enough that everyone can follow along with the commands. There'll be a decent number of console commands, so you might want to get that opened up. I've got VS Code right here, which I absolutely love. I think everyone who does Python should be using VS Code. Let's see. And I'm going to go ahead and Pip install Django, just to show you that command. I, of course, already have Django installed. And then I'm going to do, once that's done, I guess I'll just give it a second because some people obviously are getting Django for the first time. It might take a moment. Yeah. Okay, Django admin start project, and then I'm just going to call this my Michigan Pi, my Pi. Wait, Michigan Pi. There we go. Start up a new Django project, change directory into that project, and then just open Visual Studio Code in that project. So yeah, now I've got a new window open, and this is what's created when you run that start project. A bunch of stuff. We're not going to worry too much about anything in here. This is sort of a lot of different settings, boilerplate code. This manage.py is just sort of a utility. That's where we do our Django, use to run our Django commands. So that's where we do Python manage.py. So now this is in that new directory that we just created. And then we pass it an argument of run server. So this will actually get Django up and running. So I can go ahead and open up my web browser. I'm going to open up Chrome and go to 127.0.1:8000. See, I do that so often I don't really think about it anymore. And just to check that this is actually running. So we've got Django 3.0 is already running on our machine. So yeah, anyone have any problem up to this step, or just need another second if you're following along? Okay. Oh, was that somebody turning off the microphone?
I'm following along, I'm up to you.
Okay, great. I will go and continue then. Right, so in Django, as I was saying with an ORM, you have actual classes, Python classes that relate specifically to tables in the database, and then you can actually save those Python objects. But it comes with, Django itself comes with pre-built models, already part of the framework. We don't actually have to create ourselves. And one of those is the user model. And it handles a bunch of stuff you'd want with a web project, like authentication and whatnot. So we are going to go and run one more command after, so stopping the web server to run the command again, python manage.py migrate. I said one more command. There's a couple more commands actually. So what this actually does is I'm going to get into the idea of migrations in just a second. Basically, as I was saying before, our data has to have a schema. Well, this will actually run a bunch of Python code to create that schema in our database. And you might be thinking, wait, there's a database running? Yes, there is. We got, that is because the magic of SQLite. And that is right here in this file that should have been created when you ran Django for the first time. SQLite is a in-process database. Should run on any platform where Python works. And so we don't have to worry about spinning up, starting up Postgres or something like in a Docker container or on our computer. It should just work. And then you can, this is just a regular SQL database, so you can replace this later on with the database of your choice. But that's this step right here, ran all of these migrations, and this is creating the schema. So now we can actually start working on our models. So we want to create a user for ourselves so we can access what's called the admin panel, which is a really cool feature that Django offers just to make things really user-friendly, simple. So Python manage.py create super user, all one word, and then it's just going to query us for information. So I'm just going to go ahead and give my username will be Paul. Don't need to enter an email address, and then testing 123, testing 123 for password. Not a good password, but it's our website, so we can make it that password. And now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and run the server again so I can access it. Go to this page, refresh the page, it's still there. And then another page that comes for free is the admin page. So /admin, it'll take you to this login screen. Call testing 123. And as you can see here, we've got groups and users. So those are the two models that are already part of the Django framework. If we jump into users, we can see our user that we created is already here in this table. And if we added more users, they'd fill this up. We can look at the individual, just see all the information. There's a lot more. There's a couple of Boolean fields. Is super user? Do they belong to groups? Does it have permissions? We're not going to get into the specifics of the user model other than the username, basically. So go back to home. We've got groups. I usually don't really mess around with groups very much. But now that we've done that, to really understand Django models, we need to actually create our own. So go ahead and stop the server again. So we can run another manage.py command. This one's just kind of boilerplate to create just everything in Django has to be in an app. We've got a project here, but then apps themselves are portable units of code. It's just a helpful way of dividing up projects. So Python manage.py start app. And then we're going to call this blog, because as I mentioned, yeah, that's what I was showing you before, is the model of blog. Okay, so now we've got some more code that's generated for us, a bunch of stuff we could use if we wanted to make an actual blog website, but we're just focused here on the models.py under this new blog directory. This says just as a quick bit of auto-generated stuff at the top here. We've already got the models module imported, so now we can create our first model. And like I said, it's just a class. We're going to call it blog post, and we're going to inherit from models.model. So this is a class in Django library, and it has a bunch of stuff in it that we're just going to get automatically. So everything, every model, obviously, that in Django is going to inherit from model. And then we do pass so that we don't actually have any content. And this is all you actually need to do in order to create a model. Now you might be thinking, I showed you before when I opened the Google Sheet there that I've got attributes. Well, the ID one is actually auto-generated if we just don't add any primary key at all to our blog post here. It'll just auto-generate an ID field. So now I'm going to show you how you actually get from the code to this being part of the database itself here. And that's a two-step process. And the first thing we do is Python manage.py make my, oh wait, I forgot one step we have to do in the code first. We need to add this app that we created, this blog app, just in our settings. Blog, there we go. So you can actually have apps, either could be in locally in the directory next to your project, or you could actually just pip install different types of apps, which is a neat thing about Django. So now we can do Python manage.py make migrations, all one word. So that creates a migration for this blog post object. It goes here, it's auto-generated, and it'll count up like this. Migrations, you never go back and change them. You just add more of them as you alter your model in order to update the database schema. And normally you don't even look at this stuff. You can sort of just get the gist here. It's creating a model. The name of that model is blog post, and it just has the one ID in it, or the one attribute, which is ID, that it needs to have. And I can show you that we'll see in a minute. The next migration will have a little bit more. And then now that we've created that migration, it hasn't actually been applied to the database yet. That is the next step, which is just Python manage.py migrate. And now the database has actually been updated. So if we go ahead and do one small step here, this is the step that, actually I'll show you first, Python manage.py run server. We go ahead, open up our admin panel. Oops, I might as well use the same browser window. Our model, our blog post model isn't shown up here. There's just one little thing we have to do to actually, we want to say that we want it to show up. We go into this admin.py under the blog directory and do admin.site.register. And then we actually have to import. So import from .model. So from this directory, .models, import blog post. And then that's the argument here, blog post. Now, there we go. Our blog post model is now part of our database, and it shows up on this page. And we can go and we can add blog posts, but it's not actually very interesting since you just save it and it's automatically given an ID. So, so far, does anyone have any questions? Or anytime anyone need any help catching up? Did that maybe miss a step?
So there's no questions in chat right now. I guess if anyone does have any questions, feel free to post in there. Does anyone else have any questions right now? All right, push on, Paul.
Okay, I will continue.
Can I just thought of a question. Do you have any kind of GUI for SQLite? Can you show us the database through a GUI just as we're going through that? When I develop, I use that all the time. So it would just be for me. I'm not sure if it's worthwhile for others.
Yeah, to actually look at the database, like the actual tables, you mean?
Yes, right. As you get around to adding content.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't really thought of that. I don't think so. I
rely on the
Data
admin
Studio.
panel, correct?
Yeah, the admin panel is a pretty good GUI, and
Okay.
once we add some more stuff, we'll be able to see it.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
If I was using Postgres, I could use Azure Data Studio, but yeah. Yeah, I almost never really need to even get into the SQL at all, because the admin page is pretty versatile. But yeah, right now, no content. So let's go and change that and actually add some attributes to our model. So let's see, go ahead and add title, will be the name of our attribute, and then we need to specify what the schema is for this, or what this column is. So this is going to be a, let's say, car field. So that's just text characters, and we just have to, it has to have one required argument, max length. Let's give it a max length of 100. And then content. Let's go ahead and say models dot text field. So this is just variable length, and it doesn't actually have to have any content. Now that we've done that, let's go ahead and reload this page. And now you see, oh, there's no such column, blog post dot title. Well, this is because we haven't migrated, so the data hasn't actually been updated. So let's go ahead and stop the server now that we've added these things. And we need to do those two steps again. Python manage.py, make migrations. And so this is one of the things about migrations is you might be changing the schema for live data. And the DBA, you'll know what a nightmare that can be, I'm sure. So we need to, in this case, since the field, the table was already created, we need to provide a default since we're adding something that's not allowed to be null. So we'll go ahead and pick the title. Since we only have one blog post so far, we'll just pick a one-off default. So that's option number 1. Option 2 is basically just to go back in and up and change things. So this lets us, one-off default when this it'll only happen once when the migration itself is applied. So now we're in actually this is a Python REPL. So we can actually write Python code here, and it's usually you just put in a string, or in this case you can use a couple different data types. If you're dealing with date time, you can actually use. So I'm just going to go ahead and provide title here. So I'll just add a string since this one is for title, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Although that's just for content. Python is awesome. And now this is the default for title. Let's go ahead and do 1 again. First blog. That'll be our title. And now we're good. Now our migration is created. Now we've got 2 migrations. Python. Now we can do Python manage.py migrate. That will apply those migrations to our database. And we can reload, start the server back up. Didn't mean to open that. Python manage.py run server. Open our database back up, and now the GUI has already been updated. It knows exactly what to do when it sees these different types of fields. We've got for the car field, it's got just a short little box because it knows when the text field, it knows it's long, so it creates the HTML element. If you add a date time field, it'll have a little time selector, which is so much nicer than trying to write out time, let me tell you, just in text. Let's see, so yes, that is done. Lost my train of thought here. So that automatically updates the GUI, but now I'm sure you're wondering how do we actually use this object in our Python code. And Django provides a really handy way of doing that, which is just the Django REPL, which is just basically like if you type Python, you get the Python REPL. You can use the Django Wrapper, which is just the Python REPL with a little bit of stuff done. It connects to the database for you ahead of time, and then it's just the REPL. So Control D, Python, it's another Python manage.py, and then just shell. So from here, we can go ahead and actually start doing stuff with our model here. So we want to import it first. So from blog.models, and everything. This is the highest level here. This is the highest level package. Blog.models import blog post. And so we can create a new blog post this way. Second, we'll just call it second, and it'll be a new blog post. So we'll use this syntax here. All right, so we've created our blog post. I'm actually going to open up a second terminal. Actually, I can go ahead and open them up parallel to each other right here. So we can run our server. There's no reason we can't run our server at the same time as we are manipulating our data in the REPL here. So we can keep looking at this page right here for blog posts. So now we've created our second blog post, but as you'll see, it isn't here yet. And the reason is we actually have to do a call save. Anytime we update a model at all, it's just in memory. It's not actually on the database, in the database yet. So by calling second.save, it'll take the current state of this object and it'll try and save it to the database. And now we have a second blog post. And these are just left as blank because we didn't specify that that wasn't allowed when we created this. So we can still have our object here, so we can actually update it a little bit. So we can say second dot title equals I don't know, C# is also good. Let's call it that. Wait, oh, mixing up my usage here. Second dot content equals, just put in anything, and then we can do second dot save, and now we're good, all updated. Is there any question?
Yes, I have a question. This is Daniel.
Yes.
In this particular case, when you created the object second, the title and content attributes, these are class attributes, as it seems to me, not the instance attributes. Is that correct?
Yeah. So there might be noticing that here this is an object.
Yeah.
But then we're actually changing. So since Python is not strongly typed language, when you actually create the model here, since you're inheriting from model, it's actually doing a bunch of stuff behind the scenes. And yeah, the way you actually change the attribute, and so yeah, it is instance level. You're right.
It is instance level, not class level.
Yeah,
okay.
Is to actually use the.
So that means there must be some something behind the scenes that when you create the actual object, it also creates an instance of it and provides you with several methods. Yes, you do have a save method, which is probably inherited. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's what this syntax is
yes.
To actually create a new instance of the object.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out how come that you have the title and content attributes. They, by the declaration of them, those seem to be class attributes, not instance attributes.
Oh, right? No, they're instance attributes. I guess I'm not familiar.
We didn't use self. Is that what you mean?
Yes. Because you did not have a dunder init method anywhere declared.
Right. I think actually I've never tried this. This would be using this syntax is equivalent to, say, defining dunder init,
Yes.
right? And we would need to call super dot. Or just super actually. I never actually tried this, but this is the equivalent. I think this should work. There should be Python should see these basically as equivalent. I'm curious if this will still work. It's one positional argument, but two were given. What? need to do some, oh, sorry, I just need to do a little bit of trickery here. Args, is that what it wants me to do? Must be typed. Am I doing this wrong? Anyone for calling on the inheriting class
you don't have any arguments passed into the supper, right?
Do we need to pass self to super? Is that? Okay, so that doesn't quite work like I thought, but basically declaring it like this, these are instance level variables.
Thank you.
So yeah, the difference you're talking about there, they're class level. I guess I haven't actually done class level in Python, where it would be the same value for every instance of that object.
Pretty much. Yeah.
But no, in this case, they are instance level.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. No problem. No, now I've realized I gotta think about that a little bit more. Good question. Okay, so back to where we were here. Now we've updated our model and we've saved it. And there are a lot more things we could do with this. We could do other models. I don't know why I closed that out. But now we're gonna focus. Now that we've updated the model, we need to look into how we actually search for our models. Let's say we want to know, for instance, how many models we have, or get a list of them all. And there's a handy syntax for doing that. That's, I guess I probably have a little time just to cover that. So we'll again from blog.models import blog. Now we are going to use a class level attribute. Oh, blog post, which is, so we're calling blogs itself and class level. If we want to, for instance, get just the first blog that's, let's see, actually blogs. So we're going to get a list of all of our blogs here. You can use blog, so that a blog post dot objects. And this is the object manager. It's just a little thing, just an object within this object to do all of the commands for searching and for doing any kind of query against our data. So the first query we're going to try is just all. So this is just kind of like doing a select star from table. So let's take a look at what we actually got back from that. This is called a query set. So it represents some query, and it hasn't actually been executed yet until we try doing something like iterate over it. Or we could, for instance, take the length, I believe. Oh, super argument. Oh, wait, I forgot. I need to save this because I had messed it up a little bit earlier. We're gonna have to start this over here. Just this shell here. From blog.models import blog post. Okay. Now, where were we? Blogs equals blog post.objects. And then our first query we're going to try is all type blogs. Yeah, it's a query set. And then we're going to try getting the length of it. And it's too long. And then another thing we could do is we could iterate over it. So for blog in blogs, print blog.title. So we have our first blog, C# is good. So this is actually how you start writing Python code to mess around with your objects, doing any kind of manipulation that you need to do. Okay, let's see. Any questions about that? I kind of probably typed through that a bit fast. I'll just show you another quick example. We could do to get, instead of a list of blogs, we could get an individual one if we're looking for one. We could blog post dot models, sorry, dot objects, and then instead of all, we'll just do something else. Get, let's say, to get an individual. But in order to get an individual, we actually have to specify what we're looking for. So here we could pass in a keyword argument into this get method. So what we'd be looking for would be something like title. And you could say first blog. And yeah, that gets our blog object one. And actually, I believe if we did say ID, that should also get the same thing. So that's how that's the start of getting lists, and then the result of this is to get the actual object itself. And then when you have a query set, you could get just an individual object by doing like something like blogs dot first. And this is blogs. Here is that query set I created a minute ago. Oh, you can also chain query sets together. You can add just more conditions to them, which is as you start to work on more complicated projects, you can do blog post objects dot filter and then pass in your filter parameters, and then you can use something like exclude, which will exclude things from your search, and just your queries can get pretty much anything you imagine trying to get some certain slice of your data. You can do it with the Django ORM. Django ORM has been around for like, I don't know when it was introduced to the framework, but the framework itself is over 10 years old. The ORM is extremely mature. Just about anything you can imagine to manipulate your data, you can do with the Django ORM. Okay, so I've covered that a little bit. Any questions about query sets, querying in general?
One question.
Oh yeah.
When it created the blog post model, did the ORM create automatically a primary key to it?
A primary key, yes. So for instance, that's the blog.id.
Okay.
So it's automatically just an integer. And actually, that reminds me, I can just show you, since an integer is not really something you really want to use as a primary key, you could just override that. We'll just do another quick migration. We'll do models dot, we'll use something like import UUID.
Oh, like a GUID.
Yeah. Oh yeah, GUID, yeah, and also called. And we'll use UUID field. And default equals UUID.UUID4. And so now instead of this primary key, we're gonna have a new one, and it'll have a default. So I believe now, once we migrate this, go and quit the server, it shouldn't ask us to actually input anything. So we'll go ahead and do Python. And did everyone, yeah, if anyone's following along, go ahead and might want to type that in. That's a little bit verbose. First import UUID, and then ID equals models.UUID field, which is just like context field. And if anyone's curious, a UUID is basically just a standard format for creating a truly random or a highly random string. I can't remember how long it is. It's like 24 bytes, and that is very, very unlikely to have a collision with any other UUID. So it stands for universally unique ID, I think, identification. And GUID is pretty much, I think it's the same thing. And that's just globally unique. So if anyone Okay, so I'll go ahead and, sorry?
No, the reason you said you wouldn't want to use integers for primary key is because of the possibility of collision domain with some other deployments.
Yeah.
If you want to load balance it, I suppose.
Yeah, if you wanted to scale up, exactly.
Yes.
So I'll go ahead and do our 2 steps for migration again. Python manage.py make migration. Oop. ID commute. Oh, yes, I forgot. We just need one more thing here. Primary key equals true, another keyword argument. So now we've created a new primary key. And I'll go ahead and save that. On manage.py migrate. And now let's open up our shell again in this left terminal. And from blog.models import blog post. Blog post dot blog equals blog post dot objects. And now we'll just use first. Don't really. Oh dear. Badly formed. Interesting. Huh. I've run into a little bit of a problem.
Can you F print it to see what you get inside?
Badly formed. I wonder if that's something. I haven't done this recently in sense of upgrading to Python 3.9 or something with UIDs.
Isn't the UID
something
function
incompatible here? Oh, that might be it. The default's not working. That's if we try it like that, I think you might be right. That's what you meant, right?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't think that shouldn't. Oh, it did alter the field on ID blog post. Huh. Okay. We just got to run those 2 commands again. Make migrations, and let's just see if that fixed it. Oh gosh, what am I thinking? Blog.models import blog post. Blog equals blog post dot objects dot first. Dang it. That's too bad. I can go and just remove this field though. I have forgotten how that is done. We can, and that's another thing you can do, of course, with migrations is to remove fields as well. So there we go. Oh, someone's are you posting a Stack Overflow? I'm not gonna get into it here. I just wanted to cover one more thing, kind of just an overview. So, but I appreciate it. Oh, I forgot to do make migrations first. So now this will just take us back to our original ID field, or at least it should. Now it might be a little bit more messed up. Horseship.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep. And he's lots of great Python material that I've also seen for other stuff. So highly recommended. Oh, yes, someone also pasted directly YouTube link. Perfect.
Yeah, thanks so much again, Paul.
You're welcome.
I think we'll go ahead and end there. Let me stop the